Real quick, I want to thank this video sponsor, which is Simply Safe. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I added more 110 outlets to my garage wall. I'm wanting to build a workbench on this bare garage wall of mine, but I wanted to add outlets near the workbench height first. Now I do have an outlet on this wall already, so I'm going to be using that as my power source. Instead of running conduit on the surface of the wall, like I've done in a previous video, I'm going to be doing something sneaky to make it hidden. I'll take the baseboard off and use the lower portion of the wall to chase my wiring, then pop up to the height I want. In the end, you won't see any wire. Let's go ahead and get started. First things first, I removed the baseboard. This will be going back on, so I was careful when removing it. I recommend using a large putty knife with a flat bar. The putty knife will help protect the drywall from getting damaged by expanding the pressured footprint of the flat bar. I started on one end and worked my way down. A tip for you on pulling these nails, most people try to hammer them out, but with them being long and skinny, it's not a good method. Instead, flip the board over and pull them out. I use a pair of pliers and simply pry the head right on out. Okay, next I cut into the drywall. For this, I'm using my Triton multi-tool and the left behind dirt line from the baseboard. I made a cut from the outlet on the left to the placement of the outlets I want on the right, just staying about a 1/4 inch under that dirt line. If you keep your garage cleaner than mine and don't have a built-in dirt line, you can use a pencil to trace the top of the baseboard before you remove it. Once the top line is cut all the way down the wall, I also made a few vertical cuts so that I could pop out this drywall in sections. My aim was to try and preserve it if I could, because I'm going to be putting it back later. I cut myself an access point on the far left to get started, but then again worked from one side to the other with a flat bar. I also kept the pieces in order just to make putting them back later a little bit easier. Alrighty, now that I could see the studs, I could start making a notch to act as a chase for my wiring. My plan is to go into each stud by about 3/4 of an inch. I just need it deep enough for a line of Romex to tuck into. I used my multi-tool to cut a top line. Then I came back with a chisel and hammer to simply knock it out. And this doesn't need to be a clean notch, it just needs to be deep enough for the wiring to set back far enough to not make the drywall bulge whenever it gets added back on. Oh, but you want to make sure that it's high enough to accept a staple. But you also want to leave about 1/8 of an inch of the stud so that the teeth of a nail plate can be added. And I'll get into more detail on both of these in a few minutes. Real quick, I want to thank this video sponsor, which is Simply Safe. You guys know I've used Simply Safe for my personal and commercial shop security for a while now. It is totally customizable home or shop security that focuses equally on up-to-date tech and reliable service. They also have a new wireless outdoor security camera that has an easy to remove chargeable battery that doesn't need an outlet. So it can go anywhere, which I really love. This camera has an ultra wide 140-degree field, 1080p high definition resolution, and it has built-in spotlight and colored night vision. I've got the security system installed, sensors to cover the windows, and HD cameras inside and out. The Simply Safe app also makes it easy for me to know what's going on at home while I'm away. I have peace of mind knowing that the interactive monitoring surface will call the police if it's alerted to anything. Their team of always-on professionals are easily reachable and always keep lines of communication open for the most protective service. Visit simplysafe.com/April to learn more and get at least 30% off your Simply Safe security system. Okay, and now to figure out the placement of the boxes so that I can start cutting in holes. I figured out how long my workbench would be, about 8 feet. Then I just randomly picked a stud bay on either end. I came up from the floor a few inches taller than my workbench height. Then I used the box that I would put into the wall. You can set it on its face and trace inside all of the ears with a pencil. And I recommend using a level here to make sure that it's straight. Once I got one, I repeated it to get the second location. Then I started cutting it out. I again reached for my multi-tool here and simply cut along my pencil line until the square popped out, or fell into the wall. Either one works. You want to have a box on hand to test fit the cut. Perfect, let's move on. Now I can start running the wiring. Starting at the outlet, I first knocked out a tab on the back right of the box. Then, to make running the wire easy, I grabbed a scrap piece of copper wiring long enough to run from the outlet to the baseboard. Then on the Romex, I stripped back everything except one wire that I could make into a loop. With such a short chase, nothing super reinforced is needed here. 2 loops on both of these ends makes feeding it through the box knockout simple and easy. I left enough sticking out of the box to be plenty, then put a kink in it to prevent it from getting pulled back while I was working. Then I started routing the wire down to the stud bay of the next outlet, stapling it to the studs as I went. And it's hard to get a hammer in this tight spot, so I used it to get the nails on the staple started, but then I grabbed a random threaded rod to act as a nail set. This made things much easier. Once the Romex was stapled, the following step was to add a nail plate. This is a simple metal plate that can be added to each stud to prevent anybody from being able to run a screw or nail into the wiring in the future. The top and bottom have teeth on it that you just need to hammer into the stud. And these teeth on the top is why you need to keep enough stud exposed for them to sink into. Now I needed to get the Romex from the baseboard up to the first gaping hole. It's very easy to make this run as the stud bay is empty. I could get the wire started at the bottom, then reach my hand inside the bay and grab hold of it to pull it all the way out. Of course, if your arm won't fit, then doing the looping wiring trick or using fish tape would also work. Again, I left enough and then some. Then to get power to the second box, I fed a new line into the first hole, then ran it down to the baseboard. Once there, I ran it over to the second stud bay, just roughly measuring at this point, to figure out how much length I would need. This allowed me to cut it off from the main reel of wire and have an easier time feeding it through from one hole to the other. I again stapled and nail plated the run as I was working from left to right. Great, now let's add the boxes. I like to feed them on the wire before putting the boxes into place, but you can do it at any time. You can kind of pre-bend the Romex to make feeding it easier. Then I shoved the back into place so that all the tabs were up against the drywall, then tightened down on the screws. If you're unfamiliar with these boxes, they're designed to go anywhere in the wall rather than having to be nailed to the side of a stud. When you turn the screw, it flings out a little flag that will attach the box to the drywall. Once the boxes are in, the last thing on wiring is to wire in all the outlets. For a double gang box, you use 2 single outlets, but then you wire one to the other with short pieces of Romex, black to gold, white to silver. Then the wire run coming from the wall can be stripped and then wired to the remaining terminals, which ties in the double gang assembly. And now it's just cleanup. I stuck the drywall pieces back in the order they popped out, adding screws to reattach it, and then I popped it back on the baseboard. And just like that, down here, it's like it never happened. But up here, I now have 8 outlets to charge or run things. All in all, this job took me 3 hours, so it is a very simple undertaking. And of course, I feel comfortable tackling this job, but if you don't, then it's definitely recommended to consult a professional, as I'm sure many of them are yelling in the comment section. I really hope that this video was helpful, at least to give you an overview on what the process is to add more outlets. I've linked to another video down in the description where I've added 220 using the panel as a source, so check that out if you're interested. Also, stay tuned for the workbench that I'm going to be building on this wall next. I'll see you then. If you're interested in building outdoor furniture, don't forget that I have a set of plans and templates for this glider. Not only can you make one for yourself, but it makes a wonderful gift for just about any occasion. You can click here for plans and here to subscribe to the channel.